Hello dear friends, as usual it's once again very hearty and warm welcome. Dear friends, in our previous lecture we have completed the remaining part of study of structure of brain. All of you are aware that the human nervous system is broadly divided into three subdivisions such as CNS, central nervous system, PNS, peripheral nervous system, and ANS, that is autonomic nervous system. As all of you are known, we people have started the study of CNS, that is central nervous system, and central nervous system consists of two main components, that is brain and spinal cord. Already we have completed the study of brain. Actually, brain, it represents 98% part of the CNS and spinal cord represents simply 2% part of the central nervous system. So now let us start the study of this topic, that is spinal cord. The spinal cord may be known as myelon because the spinal cord, it contains the bundles of myelinated or medullated nerve fibers, about which we shall discuss slowly in the same topic. Now please look at the diagram. Consider here is supposed to be the dorsal view of brain. Just consider here is the dorsal view of brain. We know that here is supposed to be the cerebellum, and the posterior most part of the brain is nothing but the medulla oblongata. Medulla oblongata. Now let us start the study of spinal cord. The spinal cord, it is nothing but simply the posterior extension of medulla oblongata. Let me show in diagram. Here I have shown the medulla oblongata, isn't it? It is the posterior most part of the brain. ब्रेनचा सगळ्यात खालचा आणि शेवटचा भाग म्हणजे मेडुला ऑब्लॉंगेटा, and the spinal cord, it arises from the base of medulla oblongata and it runs downward through the cavity of vertebral column, that is neural canal. Let me show in diagram. Suppose here is a spinal cord. I said that the spinal cord is the posterior extension of medulla oblongata and it runs downward through the cavity of vertebral column, that is neural canal. या ठिकाणी जणू काही या मेडुला ऑब्लॉंगेटाचाच खाली निमुळता होत गेलेला भाग म्हणजे स्पायनल कॉर्ड होय. आणि हा स्पायनल कॉर्ड मराठीत मज्जारज्जू हा आपल्या व्हर्टिब्रल कॉलमच्या म्हणजे पाठीच्या कण्यामध्ये असलेल्या पोकळीमधून पास झालेला असतो. सो once again I am going to repeat that the spinal cord is simply the posterior extension of medulla oblongata and it runs through the cavity of vertebral column, that is neural canal. The spinal cord is cylindrical but somewhat dorsoventrally flattened. It is not exactly cylindrical. It is slightly dorsoventrally flattened. Means it appears flat along the dorsal and ventral side. पाठीकडच्या आणि पुढच्या बाजूने स्पायनल कॉर्ड हा थोडासा फ्लॅट असतो. Means it is not exactly cylindrical. तो अगदीच दंडगोलाकार नसतो. It is soft structure, whitish to creamy in color, and it is tubular structure. It means it encloses a cavity. Hence it is known as the tubular structure. The length of spinal cord in normal adult human being is about 42 to 45 centimeter and it is about 2 to 2.5 centimeter in width. I said the spinal cord is about 42 to 45 centimeter in its length and 2 to 2.5 centimeter broad in normal adult human being. While the weight of spinal cord in normal adult human being is near about 35 grams. Now let us talk initially about the protection of spinal cord. I told you that the spinal cord, it passes through the vertebral column. Spinal cord हा vertebral column मधून गेलेला असतो. We know that vertebral column, that is spine, it is made up of number of ring-like bones placed one above the other, that is nothing but the vertebrae. आपल्याला माहिती आहे, in 11th we have studied, 11वीत आपण शिकला असाल की वर्टिब्रल कॉलम हा मणक्यांनी तयार झालेला असतो आणि हे पाठीचे मणके वर्टिब्री एकमेकावर रचलेले असतात आणि त्यांच्यामध्ये असणारी जी पोकळी आहे जिला न्यूरल कॅनल असं म्हणतात, त्यातून हा स्पायनल कॉर्ड गेलेला असतो. इट मीन्स द स्पायनल कॉर्ड इज वेल प्रोटेक्टेड विदिन द वर्टिब्रल कॉलम. In addition to that, the spinal cord also shows three protective membranous coverings just like the brain, that is meninges. ज्याप्रमाणे ब्रेन भोवती प्रोटेक्टिव्ह कव्हरिंग्स असतात ज्यांना आपण meninges म्हणतो, त्याचप्रमाणे the spinal cord is also well protected by means of three meninges such as outer dura mater, middle arachnoid mater and inner pia mater, about which we have already discussed in our initial part of the same chapter. We know that in between meninges there are presence of some gap, some spaces, such as the space between dura mater and arachnoid mater is known as subdural space, while the space between arachnoid mater and pia mater is known as subarachnoid space. Please look at the diagram. I am going to repeat same point once again. Consider here are supposed to be the vertebrae. आपण कल्पना करूया की या ठिकाणी हे वर्टिब्री आहेत, म्हणजेच पाठीचा कणा तयार करणारे मणके आहेत. या ठिकाणी मी अशा प्रकारे ते दाखवतोय just for our understanding. And I said that the spinal cord is also surrounded by three meninges. Suppose this is outermost meninge, that is dura mater. We know there is a little gap between the dura mater and vertebrae, which is known as epidural space, filled by means of adipose tissue. Then here is a middle meninge known as arachnoid mater. The space between dura mater and arachnoid mater is known as subdural space, and it is filled by means of serous fluid, we have already discussed, and the innermost meninges which remain almost attached to the spinal cord, that is nothing but the pia mater. We know it is highly vascular. The space between arachnoid mater and pia mater is known as the subarachnoid space. It is filled by means of cerebrospinal fluid. याबाबत आधीच आपण या चॅप्टरच्या सुरुवातीला चर्चा केलेली आहे. Now I said that the spinal cord is well protected within the vertebral column as well as these three meninges, dura, arachnoid and pia mater. Now the spinal cord is slightly broad near its origin, while it goes on narrowing, it goes on tapering towards the posterior end. या ठिकाणी हा स्पायनल कॉर्ड सुरुवातीला वरच्या टोकाजवळ जिथून त्याची सुरुवात झालेली आहे त्या ठिकाणी थोडासा रुंद असतो, ब्रॉड असतो आणि नंतर तो निमुळता होत जातो. Actually, the main part of spinal cord, it ends at the level of first or second lumbar vertebra. Listen, I said the main part of spinal cord, it ends at the level of first or second lumbar vertebra. प्रश्न निर्माण होतो, what does it mean lumbar vertebra? You might have studied that the vertebrae which form our vertebral column, आपला पाठीचा कणा तयार करणारे जे मणके आहेत त्यांचं वर्गीकरण केलं जातं, त्यांचे प्रकार पाडले जातात. The first 7 vertebrae are known as cervical vertebrae which are present in the neck region. पाठीचा कणा तयार करणारे जे मणके आहेत त्यापैकी पहिले 7 मणके जे नेक रिजन मध्ये मानेच्या भागामध्ये असतात त्यांना सर्वायकल वर्टिब्री म्हणतात. आफ्टर दॅट द नेक्स्ट 12 वर्टिब्री आर सेड टू बी थोरॅसिक वर्टिब्री. त्यानंतरच्या 12 मणक्यांना थोरॅसिक वर्टिब्री म्हणतात अँड नेक्स्ट 5 वर्टिब्री आर नोन ॲज lumbar vertebrae. And I said that consider these are supposed to be the 5 lumbar vertebrae. And I said that the main part of spinal cord it ends somewhat at the level of first or second lumbar vertebra. Okay, and this region, consider suppose this region where the main part of spinal cord ends is known as Conus medullaris. सर्वसाधारणपणे स्पायनल कॉर्डचा मुख्य भाग हा पहिल्या किंवा दुसऱ्या लंबार वर्टिब्रीच्या लेवलला संपतो आणि त्या भागाला त्या रिजनला ज्या ठिकाणी स्पायनल कॉर्डचा मुख्य भाग संपतो त्या भागाला म्हटलं जातं कोनस मेडुलॅरिस. अँड देन द पोस्टेरियर व्हेरी थिन एक्सटेन्शन कोनस मेडुलॅरिस नंतर असलेला अतिशय थिन असा जो भाग आहे स्पायनल कॉर्डचा इट इज नॉन नर्वस पार्ट. इट इज नोन ॲज फायलम टर्मिनेल. Actually this phylum terminal is non-nervous part and it is considered as simply the extension of pia mater. खरं वास्तविक हे फायलम टर्मिनेल शेवटचा जो हा अतिशय थिन निमुळता झालेला हा भाग जो मी या ठिकाणी दाखवतोय ज्याला फायलम टर्मिनेल म्हटलं जातं तो प्रत्यक्ष पाया मॅटरचं एक्सटेन्शन आहे. जणू काही पाया मॅटरचा जो खाली गेलेला भाग आहे एक्सटेंड झालेला भाग आहे. Also, the spinal cord, it shows enlargement at 2 places. See here in the diagram. Here is one enlargement, here is another enlargement. It means the spinal cord, it shows 2 swollen structures, 2 swollen areas along its length. One in the cervical region and that's why it is known as cervical swelling. And another in the lumbar region that's why known as lumbar swelling. या ठिकाणी हे 2 swellings आहेत फुगीर भाग आहेत. Actually these swellings, this enlarged structure contain large number of nerve cells, more number of nerve cell bodies than other part of the spinal cord. स्पायनल कॉर्डच्या इतर भागांपेक्षा या 2 भागांमध्ये सॉलन पार्ट्स मध्ये नर्व सेल बॉडीज अर्थात चेतापेशींची बॉडी सोमा आपण शिकलो आहोत हे खूप जास्त प्रमाणात ॲग्रिगेट झालेले असतात. अँड ऑल्सो फ्रॉम दीज स्वेलिंग्स enlarged structure the nerves are given out which are supplied to the arms and legs respectively. We are going to talk about that nerves, spinal nerves in next topic, but temporarily you just remember whatever nerves arise from this region, these are many in number and these are supplied to the arms and legs respectively. Now we people have to study about the histological structure of spinal cord. Before to that, one more point here I would like to add that the spinal nerves, before to that, let me tell you that the spinal cord gives out about 31 pairs of nerves. Spinal cord पासून एकूण 31 pairs 31 चेतांच्या जोड्या या उगम पावलेल्या असतात. About which we shall talk later on. That nerves which are given out by the spinal cord are known as spinal nerves. Spinal nerves. And the spinal nerves which arise from the hind part or posterior part of the spinal cord along with phylum terminal appears just like the horse's tail and this structure is known as Cauda equina. Please listen. I said that many of the nerves arise either from this region, that is cervical swelling, or from lumbar swelling. Now, the nerves which arises from this posterior part of the spinal cord, स्पायनल कॉर्डच्या या खालच्या भागापासून उगम पावलेल्या या चेता आहेत से अरायझिंग फ्रॉम दिस लंबार स्वेलिंग और अराउंड द कोनस मेडुलारिस. कोनस मेडुलारिस म्हणजे काय आता मी तुम्हाला सांगितलं, ज्या ठिकाणी स्पायनल कॉर्डचा मुख्य भाग संपतो त्या भागाला म्हटलं जातं कोनस मेडुलारिस. या कोनस मेडुलारिसच्या जवळून उगम पावणाऱ्या आणि लंबार स्वेलिंग वरून उगम पावणाऱ्या ज्या नर्व्स आहेत त्या आणि हा फायलम टर्मिनेल एकत्रितपणे त्यांचा बंच हा कशासारखा दिसतो, इट लुक्स लाईक द हॉर्सेस टेल. याचा अर्थ हॉर्स घोड्याच्या झुपकेदार शेपटीसारखं हे स्ट्रक्चर दिसतं आणि म्हणून दिस बंच ऑफ नर्व्स अरायझिंग फ्रॉम the posterior part of spinal cord, hind part of spinal cord along with phylum terminal is known as Cauda Equida. Here Cauda, this word stands for the tail and Equina stands for the horse. You know the genus of horse is Equus, from which Equina. Okay. Now we have to understand about the internal structure, that is T.S.OF spinal cord. So let us talk about it. Internal structure of spinal cord, that is nothing but we people have to study the TS, transverse section of spinal cord. I am going to explain you here by drawing a suitable diagram. In transverse section, in TS, spinal cord चा आडवा छेद घेतला असता, consider या ठिकाणी स्पायनल कॉर्डचा जर आडवा छेद घेतला, ट्रान्सव्हर्स सेक्शन घेतला, तर इन टीएस, इन ट्रान्सव्हर्स सेक्शन, द स्पायनल कॉर्ड इट अपीयर्स ओव्हल and slightly dorso-ventrally flattened structure. Dorso-ventrally flattened structure. Please look in the diagram. Whenever we take the T.S.OF spinal cord, it appears not exactly spherical or rounded, but it appears slightly oval and dorso-ventrally flattened. I told you that the spinal cord is not exactly cylindrical. It is slightly dorso-ventrally flattened. Consider this is the dorsal side or posterior surface of spinal cord and this is the ventral or anterior surface of spinal cord. आपल्याला माहिती आहे की स्पायनल कॉर्ड अशा प्रकारे सरळ आपल्या पाठीच्या कण्यामधून गेलेला असतो आणि त्यामुळे बॅक साइड अँड फ्रंट साइड, डॉर्सल साइड अँड वेंट्रल साइड और पोस्टीरियर साइड अँड anterior side. So I said that in transverse section, consider this is the posterior surface or dorsal side and here is the anterior surface or ventral side. Now in TS, the spinal cord appears oval or slightly dorso-ventrally flattened. It shows a shallow, broad and non-vascular groove along the length of spinal cord. Listen, I said it shows a shallow, broad and non-vascular, non-choroid groove along the mid-dorsal line of spinal cord. Mid-dorsal line of spinal cord. Middle, मध्यभागी. Dorsal, that is posterior surface. पाठीकडच्या बाजूने स्पायनल कॉर्डवर अशा प्रकारे एक उथळ मात्र थोडीशी ब्रॉड खाच दिसते की जी नॉन कोरॉइड आहे, नॉन व्हॅस्क्युलर आहे. मीन्स व्हॉट, इट डज नॉट शो द नेटवर्क ऑफ ब्लड कॅपिलरीज. This groove present along the mid-dorsal line of spinal cord is known as dorsal fissure or may be known as posterior fissure. Dorsal, mid-dorsal, better to say mid-dorsal or posterior fissure. Fissure groove. In the same manner, along the ventral side, along the anterior surface, it also shows quite deep, narrow and choroid, that is vascular groove. Ventral side ने anterior surface ने मध्यभागी त्या ठिकाणी जास्त डीप आणि कोरॉइड अशा प्रकारची खाच दिसते. This groove is known as midventral fissure as it runs along the midventral line. Therefore, it is called midventral fissure or simply called as anterior fissure. Anterior fissure. These two fissures, that is posterior and anterior, these two fissures divide spinal cord internally partially into left and right halves. अर्थात या ठिकाणी डॉर्सल फिशर आणि वेंट्रल फिशर मुळे पोस्टेरियर फिशर आणि अँटेरियर फिशर मुळे आतल्या बाजूने स्पायनल कॉर्डचे दोन पार्शियल अंशतः भाग होतात. You can see and notice this is supposed to be the left part and this is supposed to be the right part. Okay, here also we can see a thin septum which extend into the spinal cord. So because of dorsal ventral fissure as well as this septum, the spinal cord internally get divided into left and right halves, partially get divided into left and right halves. We know that the spinal cord is tubular, means what? It encloses a cavity. Spinal cord tubular आहे, याचा अर्थ त्याच्या आतमध्ये पोकळी आहे, cavity आहे. The cavity enclosed by spinal cord is known as central canal. This central canal is in communication with the fourth ventricle at its upper end and closed at the lower end. Listen carefully. We have already studied about the brain and you know the cavity of medulla oblongata is known as fourth ventricle. आपल्याला आठवलं असेल मेडुला ऑब्लॉंगेटाची जी कॅव्हिटी आहे तिला फोर्थ वेंट्रिकल असं म्हणतात. आणि या ठिकाणी स्पायनल कॉर्ड मध्ये जी पोकळी आहे जिला सेंट्रल कॅनॉल म्हटलं जातं ती वर अर्थातच या फोर्थ वेंट्रिकलशी जोडलेली असते. आय सेड दॅट कॅव्हिटी ऑफ स्पायनल कॉर्ड दॅट इज सेंट्रल कॅनॉल इज इन कम्युनिकेशन विथ द फोर्थ वेंट्रिकल दॅट इज द कॅव्हिटी ऑफ medulla oblongata at the upper end and the central canal is closed at the lower end near the region of conus medullaris. ज्या ठिकाणी स्पायनल कॉर्डचा मुख्य भाग संपतो, ज्या भागाला आपण कोनस मेडुलारिस म्हणतो, त्या ठिकाणी ही सेंट्रल कॅनॉल बंद असते, क्लोज झालेली असते. ऑफ कोर्स दिस सेंट्रल कॅनॉल is internally lined by columnar epithelial cells known as ependyma, or that cells are called ependymal cells, and these ependymal cells are responsible for the secretion of CSF, cerebrospinal fluid. Thus the central canal is filled by means of CSF. या ठिकाणी सेंट्रल कॅनॉल मध्ये CSF हे भरलेलं असतं. सेंट्रल कॅनॉल इज filled by means of CSF. The central canal is surrounded by inner H or butterfly shaped gray matter and outer white matter. Please look at the diagram. I said that this central canal is surrounded by inner capital H or slightly butterfly shaped gray matter. Here I am going to show. And outer white matter. Consider here is supposed to be the gray matter. This H shaped nervous tissue represents gray matter. What is gray matter? We all are known. It is a type of nervous tissue which appears grayish in color due to abundant number of cell bodies of nerve cells. And gray matter is surrounded by white matter. Now please look here in the diagram. White matter is divided into 6 columns. These columns of white matter are also known as funiculi. Look at the diagram. Here are 6 columns of white matter, such as dorsal funiculi. As these columns are present towards the dorsal surface or posterior surface, these two are ventral funiculi, and the remaining two present towards the lateral side known as lateral funiculi. Now, I said that the grey matter appears butterfly shaped or capital H shaped, and that's why it shows 3 pairs of horns or projections. See, here are 2 projections towards the dorsal side known as dorsal horns, pair of dorsal horns. Then the 2 projections towards the ventral surface, ventral side known as ventral horns, and 2 less distinct projection towards the lateral side known as lateral horns. Actually, these dorsal horns and ventral horns extend in the form of dorsal root and ventral root of spinal nerve, about which we shall discuss later on. परंतु या ठिकाणी डॉर्सल हॉर्न्स पासून आणि वेंट्रल हॉर्न्स पासून जे एक्सटेन्शन बाहेर पडतात ते पुढे जाऊन स्पाइनल नर्व तयार करत असतात. हाउ इज दॅट? वी शॅल स्टडी लेटर ऑन, बट टेम्पररीली यू जस्ट रिमेंबर दॅट बीइंग एच शेप्ड or butterfly shaped, the gray matter it shows 3 pairs of projections, 3 pairs of horns such as dorsal horns, lateral horns and ventral horns. Now, funiculi of white matter contain thick bands of myelinated or medullated nerve fibers, may be known as nerve tracts. Nerve tracts. या ठिकाणी डॉर्सल फ्युनिक्युलाय, वेंट्रल फ्युनिक्युलाय आणि लॅटरल फ्युनिक्युलाय मधून मायलिनेटेड नर्व फायबर्सचे थिक बँड्स हे पास झालेले असतात. मीन्स ॲक्च्युली these funiculi contain the bundle of myelinated or medullated nerves known as nerve tracts. Actually, these nerve tracts are of 2 types, such as the ascending nerve tracts and descending nerve tracts. Ascending nerve tracts passes through the dorsal funiculi. Consider these are ascending nerve tracts. They pass only through the dorsal funiculi, and these ascending nerve tracts are responsible for the conduction of signal, conduction of impulses up towards the brain, while the descending nerve tracts passes through the lateral funiculi and ventral funiculi. Descending, name itself indicate, they conduct signals, they conduct impulses away from the brain, say in downward direction, and that's why the ascending nerve tracts may be known as the sensory nerve tracts and descending as motor nerve tracts. It means the main function of spinal cord is to conduct electric signal, nerve impulses to and fro the brain. It means the ascending or sensory nerve tract, it conduct impulses towards the brain, and descending nerve tracts conduct impulses away from the brain. Of course, the spinal cord, with the help of spinal nerves, it connects the different body parts with the brain. Another important function of spinal cord, that it acts as the center of so many different reflex responses. It means many of the reflex responses are given at the level of spinal cord. Reflex responses म्हणजे काय हे आपल्याला पुढे शिकायला येणार आहे. But the quick responses are known as the reflex responses. प्रतिक्षिप्त क्रिया मराठी अर्थात बऱ्याचशा रिफ्लेक्स रिस्पॉन्सेस वर नियंत्रण ठेवण्याचे कार्य हे स्पायनल कॉर्ड मार्फत केलं जातं विदाउट कन्सर्न विथ द ब्रेन. इट मीन्स it prevents the overloading of brain, fatigue of brain. That's all about the function and structure of spinal cord. Here it ends the study of central nervous system. Now next lecture we shall talk about the peripheral nervous system. So let us stop here. Thank you and bye.